Right now, a widespread storm track is sweeping across the entire country. And over the next 48 to 72 hours, this system is going to bring an extraordinary sequence of severe weather threats, flash flooding, and an absolutely unprecedented hurricane threat heading directly toward Hawaii. We are looking at scattered severe thunderstorms that will fire from the Great Plains all the way to the East Coast, producing damaging winds that could exceed 75 miles per hour in some locations, large hail that could rival golf ball sizes, and isolated tornadoes that could rapidly organize under the right atmospheric conditions. Meanwhile, soaked grounds across the Great Lakes region and the Ohio Valley are going to continue driving a major flash flood threat, creating a double hazard scenario where rainfall rates and antecedent moisture will combine into something genuinely dangerous. The South is also going to be dealing with oppressive heat and humidity that will bake the region, making outdoor activities particularly hazardous for vulnerable populations. But outside of the continental United States, we are tracking something truly historic and extraordinary. Tropical Storm LA is positioned to potentially become the first hurricane in modern records to strike Hawaii's Big Island, and if this tracks as the models are suggesting, we could be witnessing one of the most significant weather events in Hawaiian history. The next 48 hours of weather are going to be very crazy, so let's get right into this forecast because we have a tremendous amount to talk about. We're going to jump right into the severe weather potential for the next several days, and we'll start with today, which is Saturday. The Storm Prediction Center has issued 2 slight risks of severe weather, and I want to walk you through exactly where these threats are positioned and what you need to be watching for. We have 1 slight risk across the high plains near Denver, Colorado, where atmospheric conditions are starting to become unstable. We also have another slight risk that stretches from northeastern Indiana near Fort Wayne back into extreme northern South Carolina. And within this entire corridor, all hazards of severe weather are actually possible. However, I want to be clear about what the main risk is going to be today, because it's not what most people think about when they hear severe weather. The main risk for Saturday is going to be straight-line damaging wind gusts that could range anywhere between 60 and 75 miles per hour across much of this threat corridor. These are the kinds of winds that can cause significant structural damage, take down large trees, and create dangerous projectiles that could impact your home and vehicles. Now, there's also going to be some large hail today, mainly over the area just east of Denver, where we could be looking at a few storms that produce up to golf ball-sized hail, which is remarkable, and definitely something that could cause some damage to property, vehicles, and anybody caught outside. Large hail production requires some very specific atmospheric conditions involving strong updrafts and moisture availability, and the area east of Denver should see those conditions develop as the day progresses. And then the tornado threat for today is confined to a fairly specific geographic area. The Fort Wayne, Cincinnati, and Columbus Triangle is where we could potentially see 1 or 2 rotating supercells develop later this afternoon as a mesoscale convective vortex moves into this region. The mesoscale convective vortex is basically a localized area of rotation that isn't technically a low-pressure system, but acts like a miniature version of one, and sometimes that's just enough to spin up some isolated tornado activity. These mesoscale vortices can be particularly difficult to predict because they depend on the exact organization and positioning of individual storm cells, which is why forecasting their behavior requires constant monitoring. I do think this tornado threat could be elevated, but I think generally speaking, the risk of tornadoes today is going to be pretty low because we're anticipating a lot of morning convection across the region. That morning convection is going to eat away at the atmospheric instability. And by the time we get to the afternoon hours when supercells would actually be able to organize best, we might not have the atmospheric ingredients we need for significant rotation. So overall, I'm not super concerned about today's tornado threat, but if you live anywhere in that triangle region from Fort Wayne to Cincinnati to Columbus, you should definitely make sure you're staying weather aware throughout the afternoon and early evening hours. The peak window for any tornadoes today is probably going to be from 5 o'clock Eastern Time all the way through 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and maybe something just after 9 o'clock as well. Other than that, a lot of this convection is going to become messy as we progress through the evening, and it will likely lead to a flash flooding threat across Ohio during the overnight hours and eventually into Sunday morning. If you live over here in Illinois, I don't anticipate much severe weather today at all, and Iowa's looking pretty quiet too. However, there could be a few storms that do fire near Des Moines and right along the Interstate 80 corridor, and those storms could produce some damaging wind gusts if they organize. The tornado risk here is going to be very, very, very low if any storm were to actually organize in this area. If you live near Chicago, don't be surprised if there are some thunderstorms sometime around or just after midnight tonight. And then back over in the Central Plains, and really anywhere around the High Plains, we're going to be looking at a repeat of what we've seen over the last few days with large hail and damaging winds being possible. The peak timing window for severe weather across the high plains is going to be mainly between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, so just continue staying weather aware throughout the day. Now we need to pivot and talk about Sunday through Tuesday, because those days are going to bring even more significant severe weather opportunities, and we have a lot to discuss about the timing and the specific threats during each of these days. Beginning with Sunday, this is going to be a bit of an interesting day for severe storms, because most of our severe weather really will not start getting going until sometime around 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right around Lake Erie and back into West Virginia. By this point, we're anticipating there could be a cluster or two of thunderstorms already ongoing, with damaging wind gusts being the main concern for those early storms. Wind shear, which is the change in wind speed and direction with height, is going to play a crucial role in how storms organize on Sunday. There will be some convection well out in front of the main storm system, and that frontal convection could actually stabilize our atmosphere a little bit, which might suppress our severe weather threat just slightly during the late afternoon once these storms actually get closer to Washington, D.C. This is an important detail because sometimes prefrontal convection can create what meteorologists call a stable layer, essentially a cap that inhibits further storm development. However, if we do have any discrete supercells out there, these storms are going to be working with at least some level of wind shear, as a low pressure system will be passing off to the north. Looking at our significant tornado parameter values, which meteorologists use to forecast the likelihood of tornado formation and supercell development, we're looking at around 0 to 1 near Washington, D.C., which is at least somewhat supportive of an isolated tornado or two developing. Back over in Pennsylvania, those significant tornado parameter values are forecasted to reach as high as about 2 right around 5 o'clock Eastern Time, and so there's at least a low-end chance of a strong tornado developing in that corridor. However, I think the main risk here will still be straight-line winds. There could be a couple of tornadoes, but I think storms are going to upscale very quickly into a messy, disorganized system. That means any sort of discrete supercells that do form probably will not be very organized, and the risk of them actually producing tornadoes is going to be low, but not zero. It is absolutely important to stay weather aware if you live anywhere near Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, or back into Washington, D.C. on Sunday afternoon. I think most of our severe weather is done by sometime around 9 to 10 o'clock in the evening, as these storms continue to lose the daylight heating that they need to maintain organization as they move across the Northeast. By Monday and Tuesday, we will be shifting our gears back to the Great Plains and also the Midwest, where severe thunderstorms will once again be on the table, and this is where things could actually get pretty interesting from a forecasting perspective. Right now, the Rufus model is showing something interesting because it does hint at thunderstorms being possible from International Falls back into North Platte, but really, the main corridor where severe weather will be maximized is going to be positioned over near Sioux Falls. The atmospheric setup for Monday and Tuesday is going to be particularly favorable for storm development compared to what we're seeing this weekend. Our instability is going to be well over 4,000 joules per kilogram by this time, which is a tremendous amount of atmospheric energy available for storm development. For context, anything over 3,000 joules per kilogram is considered significant, so we're talking about nearly 50% more instability than what would normally be considered extreme. In addition to that, our tornado threat is also forecasted to be a bit more elevated, with significant tornado parameter values being around 2 to 3, which is actually pretty solid and indicates that supercells, if they develop, would have the atmospheric ingredients needed to produce rotation and potentially tornadoes. That's a large area too. We're looking at Watertown, Sioux Falls, and Sioux City, where there could be a risk of tornadoes, but that is going to come down to storms actually firing in this area, and them being surface-based and discrete. Surface-based supercells tend to be the most organized and most likely to produce significant tornadoes, which is why the exact development area and timing will be so critical to monitor. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to happen yet, because the timing of this storm system is going to be absolutely crucial. If we do see supercells organize over this area, there could be a legitimate tornado risk that develops. So definitely something to keep monitoring as we get closer to Monday and Tuesday. Then as we go into Tuesday, the threat of severe weather will shift, mainly centered across Iowa, but I think severe thunderstorms are going to be possible across a pretty large area across Tuesday. The GFS model right now is clearly hinting at there being a risk of thunderstorms anywhere from Escanaba back over in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan back into Sioux City and beyond. That's just starting around 5 o'clock Central Time, but they will continue to get more widespread as the day progresses. Our main corridor of severe weather is setting up around Omaha, Des Moines, and Davenport, with straight-line damaging wind gusts being the big concern, as a line of thunderstorms is appearing likely for your Tuesday. This is something that bears watching closely, because Tuesday could actually wind up being a more significant tornado day than what we're looking at for Saturday and Sunday combined. The setup on Tuesday is going to be particularly interesting from a severe weather perspective. Now, if you live in Milwaukee and Chicago, I have some good news for you. I don't think there's going to be any major severe weather risk in your immediate area for Tuesday, but any remaining storms that persist from late Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning will likely hit your areas. So there could be some straight line winds and maybe a very low tornado risk, but otherwise the big threat across your region will be dampened. The big threat here will be damaging wind gusts across Iowa, northern Missouri, and extreme western Illinois. And then on Wednesday, this entire storm system will make its way towards the northeast. I don't think we're going to see much in the way of severe weather on Wednesday along the East Coast, as this storm system will likely be in a weakening trend by that point. And then by Thursday and Friday, uncertainty really starts to grow about exactly where any severe weather will set up. But the GFS model here does hint that maybe a little bit more severe weather will be possible in Minnesota and Wisconsin by Friday, though again, a lot of uncertainty remains in the long-term outlook. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we'll have another update for you here soon on any changes to the forecast as this situation evolves. Now, before we get into some of the most remarkable weather development we're tracking right now, I need to talk about today's sponsor, and it's actually very relevant to severe weather season. One thing I know that all of us are guilty of is putting off a doctor's appointment because the process is just such a hassle. You have to figure out who is nearby, who actually accepts your insurance, who has decent reviews, and most importantly, figure out if you can actually get an appointment sometime soon. Severe weather season always seems to line up perfectly with the time of the year when I need my annual wellness checkup, and I know I'm not alone in this. That is why today's video is sponsored by ZDoc. ZDoc makes it much easier to search and compare local in-network doctors all in one place. You can look through detailed profiles and reviews from real patients, see actual appointment openings that are available, and book a visit online without making a bunch of phone calls or playing phone tag. The appointments are available within 24 to 72 hours in most cases. ZDoc is also completely free to use, which is fantastic. You can choose the doctor based on your own needs and preferences, and then book the appointment directly through the platform without any hassle. When I used ZDoc to get a wellness check, I got mine within 48 hours, and you can do the same. Taking care of your health just got a whole lot easier. Click the top link in the description below or go to ZDoc. Calm max velocity to check that appointment off your to-do list and make sure you're staying healthy during severe weather season. Thank you so much to ZDoc for sponsoring today's forecast and helping all of us take better care of our health. Now, let's pivot to something that is absolutely extraordinary and honestly, something that we don't see very often in meteorology. A pretty rare and historic situation is evolving right now over near Hawaii. We are anticipating a hurricane to form today, potentially making landfall on the big island of Hawaii. And you might be wondering, why is this such a big deal? Why are we talking about a hurricane in Hawaii when we've got severe weather happening across the mainland? Well, the answer is absolutely significant. Tropical storm LA is continuing to intensify right now, and if it does make landfall as a hurricane on the Big Island, it would be the first hurricane in modern records and in history to make landfall on the Big Island of Hawaii. We're talking about an event that has potentially never happened before in modern meteorological records. That's something that should really put into perspective just how significant and rare this situation is. The National Hurricane Center has our cone of uncertainty basically just barely offshore, and this is where the center could potentially track. The center could go as far north as just north of Hawaiian Ocean View, or it could also stay well offshore and miss the Big Island entirely. However, as we look at the current center of circulation, it's definitely still staying on track for being fairly close to the southern portion of the Big Island. One of the main concerns we have is that some of the hurricane models are showing that this might make a direct landfall on the eastern side of the Big Island. If this were to take place, we'd be talking about a catastrophic flooding threat that would develop over near Hilo, which sits on the eastern side where the winds would be strongest and the rainfall would be most concentrated. Regardless of exactly where it tracks, this system is probably going to dump somewhere around 12 to 24 inches of rain, and a pretty solid chunk of the eastern half of the Big Island is in the path of this rainfall. That is obviously a massive concern because we're talking about a lot of rain falling in a very short period of time. And with the topography of Hawaii, with there being a big mountain on the western side of the Big Island, this could easily create mudslides which could very easily become dangerous and destructive. So it's really important here, if you live on the Big Island of Hawaii, that you're staying very vigilant today and into early tomorrow as this hurricane does either pass or make landfall over the Big Island. The rainfall threat is really the most concerning aspect of this entire system, and the models are showing something that we need to pay very close attention to. The hurricane models are showing a bullseye concentrated right over near Hilo, with an expected rainfall amount of between 2 to 3 feet in that immediate area. In some cases, we're even seeing projections of 3 feet or more of rain, especially over the areas just west of Hilo and east of the Big Mountain. To put that into perspective, 2 to 3 feet of rain in a short time period is absolutely extraordinary and creates conditions where flash flooding becomes not just possible, but probable and potentially catastrophic. I hate to say it, but almost every single hurricane model is showing this exact same sort of scenario happening here on the Big Island, where there could be a major flash flood threat that takes place on the eastern side of where the mountains are located. When you see this kind of model consensus, where there's very little disagreement among the various forecast models about the general rainfall pattern, that's actually indicative of a high confidence forecast. That's all due to the topography of the island and how the moisture gets channeled into this zone. The windward side of the Big Island naturally captures and concentrates moisture, creating what meteorologists call orographic enhancement. These are really concerning trends that we're seeing right now with all of the hurricane models in terms of the rainfall distribution. Even areas over here, just northwest of the Big Island, are picking up some significant rainfall. There's a localized area near Hana where we're forecasting around 1 to 2 feet of rainfall, which could also lead to some catastrophic flooding and mudslides. These are very concerning trends when it comes to the overall rainfall picture for this system. But another thing that is really concerning and equally important is how strong the winds will be right when this makes landfall on the Big Island. We are anticipating wind gusts to peak at around 90 miles per hour when this makes landfall on the Big Island later today, assuming it does actually make landfall. These are hurricane force winds that can cause catastrophic damage to buildings, infrastructure, and vegetation. Even if it doesn't make a direct landfall on the island, I still think the winds even right inland are probably still going to peak around 80 to 90 miles per hour, which is still tremendously destructive. 90-mile-per-hour winds can tear roofs off buildings, snap trees, overturn vehicles, and create a genuinely dangerous environment. On the north side, near Hilo, we're looking at probably around 70 to 80 miles per hour winds later this afternoon. These are still hurricane force conditions that demand respect. These are winds that can cause significant structural damage, take roofs off buildings, and create dangerous conditions for anybody outside. Combined with the rainfall threat, the wind damage from the system could be quite extensive across the Big Island. As we go later into the evening hours, the hurricane will continue to track west. It'll probably weaken back down to a tropical storm as it goes west of the Big Island and moves into the open waters of the Pacific. Wind gusts, though, could easily still be around 50 to 60 miles per hour near Honolulu, and also back towards the Hawaiian ocean view, even after it weakens. And then on Sunday, really early Sunday morning, local time here for Hawaii, the far western islands will likely start to see some significant wind gusts, right around 50 to 60 miles per hour at their peak. The duration of impacts could extend through much of Sunday, so people in the western parts of Hawaii need to continue monitoring this system as it tracks across the island chain. Then, late Sunday and early Monday, this system is moving away and out into the open Pacific Ocean. At that point, most of Hawaii will just be in cleanup mode, dealing with all the flash flooding that is coming, in addition to the strong winds that will have impacted the islands. There will likely be some outer bands from the remnants of this system that impact areas like Maui, and this could lead to at least a few inches of rain, maybe a couple localized areas seeing around 6 to 12 inches depending on exactly where it tracks relative to that island. But otherwise, the far western islands can expect gusty winds and maybe a very low tornado risk being on the table as this weakened system does pass by Hawaii. The overall rainfall distribution across the Big Island is something we really need to emphasize because it represents a genuine and significant catastrophic threat. In terms of total rainfall, the hurricane models are uniformly showing tremendous amounts of moisture being dumped. The bullseye remains positioned right over the Big Island's eastern side, particularly the area around Hilo, where the most extreme rainfall is anticipated. The models show the same sort of scenario happening consistently across almost every single forecast, which means we have a lot of confidence in the overall direction and the general rainfall distribution. The concern is that when you combine 2 to 3 feet of rain in some areas with the steep topography of the Big Island, you're creating an environment where mudslides and flash flooding become catastrophic hazards. The slopes are steep, the mountains are tall, and when that much moisture gets concentrated in a short time period, the water has to go somewhere. The results can be truly devastating. Let me walk you through the timing of all of this because understanding when impacts will be most severe is absolutely critical. Right now, we're looking at the hurricane forming today and intensifying as it approaches the Big Island. The strongest impacts are expected to occur later today and into early tomorrow morning as the center of circulation moves closest to the island. The peak impacts, including the strongest winds and the heaviest rainfall, should occur during the daylight hours today through tonight. By tomorrow morning, the system should be weakening as it moves west of the Big Island and transitions back to a tropical storm status. By Sunday, the system will be continuing to weaken in the open Pacific, though residual impacts and outer bands could still affect the western islands. The entire event is expected to be relatively compact, with the most extreme impacts concentrated over a 1 to 2 day period. Throughout all of this, I want to stress the critical importance of preparation and staying fully informed. If you live on Hawaii's Big Island, you need to be taking this seriously right now. The National Hurricane Center is going to be updating their forecasts frequently, so make sure you're monitoring those updates throughout the day. Have your emergency supplies ready, have a plan for where you're going to go if evacuations are ordered, and make absolutely sure that you're not driving through flooded areas if they develop. Flash flooding can appear very suddenly, and it can be extremely dangerous. Do not underestimate the threat that this system presents, because this truly is a historic and unprecedented weather event. Now, the broader context here is that we have two major weather systems affecting different parts of the country simultaneously. The continental United States is dealing with a multi-day severe weather outbreak with tornadoes, hail, and damaging winds stretching from the Great Plains to the East Coast. Meanwhile, Hawaii is bracing for an unprecedented hurricane impact. This kind of simultaneous major weather event across such a large geographic area is unusual and speaks to the complexity of the atmospheric pattern we're currently experiencing. It's a reminder of just how dynamic and unpredictable weather can be and why having accurate forecasts and staying informed is so critically important. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we're going to have another important update for you here very soon on any changes to the forecast as these systems evolve throughout the day. There's a chance of a live stream happening tomorrow as well, so make sure you're subscribed and you click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live. That way, you can get real-time updates and in-depth analysis as these situations develop and change. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below because we post frequent weather updates throughout severe weather season, and we want to make sure you don't miss any important information. Our next video will likely be coming Monday with a full update on how these systems evolved and what the next threats are going to be. Between now and then, if there are significant developments with either the mainland severe weather or the hurricane situation in Hawaii, we will be going live to discuss what's happening and provide you with the latest information. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel, stay weather aware, stay safe out there, prepare accordingly for the threats in your area, and we will see you in the next video.